What's up guys, and welcome to Drive Steady. It's time to fire up the 2020 C8 Corvette topic again because some more news has been released regarding the weight, performance, and dimensions. So in this video we'll talk about these new C8 Corvette specs and compare them to the previous generation C7 Corvette, and as an added bonus briefly touch on some C8 Z06 rumors. Before I get started, I wanted to thank all of you who subscribe to our channel. Appreciate everyone's time and all the views. Alright, so the first bit of new information is related to the Z51 package. As a reminder, the Z51 is a performance package that gives you bigger brakes, 5 more horsepower over the base version as a result of the performance exhaust, and handling enhancements, all at the cost of $5,000. Again, a reminder that the 0 to 60 number of under 3 seconds will be attained by the Z51 car. There was never any mention of how fast the base car would be. But now all of that has changed thanks to the Corvette form. We now know that the Z51 car will get 0 to 60 in 2.9 seconds, while the base car will get there in 3 seconds flat. I must say that this is insane performance from the base car, considering that the C7 Corvette got 0 to 60 in 3.7 seconds with the automatic transmission and the Z51 package. Now, I've seen a lot of people complaining about the Z51 saying, why would anybody get it, blah, 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 blah. It costs way too much. But in my opinion, it's a nice to have option, and I envision those who want the bigger brakes and the beefier suspension and the summer tires will opt for the Z51 package. But that's my opinion on it. Let me know in the comments below if you'll be speccing the Z51 in your C8 Corvette, or overall your opinion of the Z51 package in and of itself. While we're on the Z51 discussion, let's talk about everyone's favorite topic to complain about, and that's weight. So we knew that the C8 Corvette would come in at 3,366 pounds dry, but the new information tells us that the base coupe will tip the scales at 3,535 pounds in the base trim and 3,577 pounds if you spec the Z51 package. Don't forget about the convertible coming in at 3,637 pounds, which isn't bad considering that it will most likely be a hardtop, so that 100 pounds here and there between the convertible and the coupe is pretty impressive. Oh, and one thing I forgot to mention, that these are all quote-unquote wet weights, meaning that they all include fluids. Now moving to the C7 comparison. I couldn't find the dry weight for the C7 base model, so we'll compare the wet weights. The C7 comes in at 3,347 pounds, which represents a 188 pound gain for the C8 Corvette. When you compare the Z51 equipped car, the number is a little smaller at 133 pounds, which is impressive. Notice how Corvette was able to reduce the weight of the Z51 package. In the C7, if you spec the Z51, it meant your car was almost 100 pounds heavier than the base version. But in the C8 Corvette, it's a little over 40 pounds heavier. So that's a nice achievement for Chevrolet. Alright, the next topic I'd like to compare is the power to weight ratio. In this chart, you'll see I've bunched the base models together and the Z51 models together, left and right respectively. So let's go over the base models first. And before I get started, power to weight ratio is achieved by horsepower divided by the vehicle's weight, and the higher the number is, the better performance you're going to achieve from the car. So in the base C8, you have 1.38 horsepower per pound or per 10 pounds. And like I mentioned, it's 490 horsepower divided by 3,535 pounds for the C8 base, equating to 0.138, giving you the 1.38 horsepower per pound. Then you've got the base model, 455 horsepower divided by 3,347, coming in at 1.35. And then you flip over onto the Z51 cars. The Z51, even though it's 5 more horsepower, remember the weight difference between the C8 Z51 and non-Z51 is about 40 pounds. That's translating into an equal power to weight ratio for a Z51 or non-Z51 car. Now the story is a little different in the C7. You can see 460 horsepower divided by the vehicle's weight is 1.33. When you compare that to the base model, it seems like the base model has a better power to weight ratio. All in all, you can see that the C8 is improving upon the power to weight ratio when you compare it to the predecessor C7 model. Okay, the next topic is horsepower per dollar. And the way you attain this number is you take the price of the car and you divide it by the horsepower, giving you a dollar per horsepower figure. Now, in the C8 Corvette, the base model, it comes in at the cheapest horsepower per dollar ratio. 1 horsepower equivalent to $122.43. That is a better equation, almost $3 less per horsepower when you compare the C7 base Corvette coming in at $125. Then you jump up to the Z51 in the C8 and the equation or the gap gets even bigger. The C8 Z51 comes in at $131.30 per horsepower and the C7 Z51 $139.10. Almost $8 difference here. Again, marginal, but you can tell that there's an improvement in both of these categories, horsepower per dollar and power to weight ratio, when comparing the C8 to the C7 generation. Now let's look at the transmission and the engine weight. Starting off with the transmission, of course, the C8 Corvette will only be available in an 8-speed DCT or double clutch transmission. In the document, it states that the C8 Corvette's double clutch transmission will weigh 341 pounds. Now, comparing that to the C7, the 8-speed automatic comes in at 210 pounds, and the 7-speed manual comes in at a feathery 146 pounds. So the double clutch transmission in the C8 Corvette is definitely heavier than both the transmissions offered in the C7 Corvette. And because I like to compare 911s and Corvettes, I thought it would be interesting to look at the C8's double clutch transmission against Porsche's double clutch transmission, better known as PDK. The PDK was weighed in 2012 at 256 pounds, which is almost 100 pounds lighter than the double clutch in the Corvette. Corvette is just getting into this double clutch arena, so they have some opportunity to match the benchmark weight of the PDK transmission from Porsche. One thing I wanted to point out about the overall weight of the C8 Corvette. Yes, it has gained about 180 pounds over the C7, but when you consider that the transmission alone weighs over 100 pounds more than the previous 8-speed automatic, I think it goes to show you how much weight Corvette has been able to cut out from the rest of the car to keep that number down as much as possible. Okay, now let's compare the mid-engine Corvette's LT2 engine to the front-engine C7 generation Corvette LT1. The LT2 comes in at 466 pounds according to the document, which represents a 1 pound gain over the LT1. Now this is a great achievement for Corvette because I'm sure moving the engine from the front of the car to the back did require some extra componentry, and also let's not forget that the LT2 has 30 more horsepower than the LT1. So kudos to Chevrolet for being able to pull off a newer generation with more horsepower, moving the engine to the back and only gaining a marginal amount of weight. Alright, the next piece of info is the top speed. So the C8 base car non-Z51 package has a top speed of 193 miles per hour and 184 in the Z51 car. The reason why the Z51 equipped car has a lower top speed is mainly because of the hideous Z51 wing. Sorry, it hasn't really grown on me yet, that being the Z51 wing, and I'm not sure it ever will. But it generates 400 pounds of downforce, so at least it's functional and it's translating to a lower top speed. Now comparing the top speed to the C7 generation, the base trim gets up to 187 miles per hour and the Z51 equipped car 186. So there's a big jump in top speed when you compare the base C7 to the base C8, 187 to 193. Getting into that 190, almost 200 horsepower echelon is a big deal for the Corvette. But you can see in the rest of my chart, I'm also comparing the C7 higher trims like the Z06, which has a top speed of 205 miles per hour, and the ZR1 at 212 miles per hour. People forget what monsters the Z06 and the ZR1 are, specifically the ZR1 with its 212 mile per hour top speed. That's just crazy. These cars come with full warranties and are, for the most part, daily drivable. The next comparison are the quarter mile times. A lot of people were looking out for these numbers as it's somewhat a direct comparison between two cars' performance limits in a straight line. The C8 crosses the quarter mile in 11.3 seconds at a blistering 121 miles per hour. Again, this is mind-melting for the base car as it's only 0.4 tenths of a second from being a 10-second car. I bet once a good driver gets their hands on the C8, it will turn high tens. It's unbelievable for a $60,000 car. Now, here are some of the comparisons between the C7 cars and the C8. The base model C7 Stingray achieves the quarter mile in 12 seconds flat at 119 miles per hour. Moving on to the Z06, 10.9 seconds at 127 miles per hour. And of course, the monster ZR1, 10.6 seconds at 134 miles per hour. And these numbers are all the published numbers from magazines and from Chevrolet. I know better numbers have been achieved for all of these cars, but nonetheless, the C8 slots in nicely below the C7 Z06 and above the base trim model. Let's talk about stopping power, specifically stopping distance. The base car has smaller brakes in the C8 compared to the Z51, and we can see that translating into the stopping distance or performance. The base car stops from 60 to 0 in 115 feet, and the Z51 in 108.4 feet. Now, comparing those numbers to the C7 cars, you can see here that the C7 Stingray Z51 package does it in a little bit better or shorter stopping distance, 107 feet. And then the monstrous Z06 and ZR1s significantly lower. I'm assuming these were done with the carbon ceramic brakes. The Z06 in 91 feet and the ZR1 with the 1LZ package and the ZTK wing or ZTK performance pack at 88 feet. Now that's just mind-melting, and I'm sure once the C8 Corvette goes into the higher trims and gets the carbon ceramic brakes installed, it will also beat out or have similar results to the Z06 and the ZR1 cars from the C7 generation. Now, here are some things that had many people freaked out about the mid-engine Corvette layout change from the front engine, and that's the size of both the exterior and the interior. In this chart, you can see the length, width, height, and wheelbase of the comparison between these two cars. Now, covering the length, C7 comes in at 177 inches compared to 182 in the C8 mid-engine car. You can see that there is a 5-inch increase in the C8 car, and when I saw the C8 in person, it looks longer, specifically from the doors back, and this number somewhat confirms my initial feelings of the C8. Next is the width. Now, the front engine is a little narrower at 73.9 inches versus the C8 76.1. I definitely think that there is going to be opportunity for a wide body package. Moving to the height, these come in identical, 48.6, 48.6. So getting in and out of the car, the roof, all of it should pretty much be the same. Next, wheelbase, 106.7, 107.2, about 0.5 inches of difference or half an inch difference when you compare these two cars. So overall, you can see that for the most part, the C8 is relatively the same size exterior dimension wise, besides the fact that it has grown in length, and that's just contributing to the change from front engine to the rear engine layout. Okay, now the last piece I'm going to compare is the interior space. Now, if I had to say what people were more concerned about, the exterior or the interior space, definitely would be the interior space. This is probably the item that everyone was freaking out about. All the Corvette fans from the C5 to the C6, C7, all the generations before the C8, specifically taller individuals, were concerned about fitting in the C8 Corvette. Now, when I saw the C8 in person, there were several individuals 6'2" and above who sat in the C8 and said repeatedly that it was comfortable and they felt totally fine. So my consensus is that if you're 6'2" or right about there, you'll fit, no problem. I think those who are in the 6'6" range or more may want to sit in a C8 before ordering one. Alright, so let's compare the interior space for the C7 and the C8. Legroom, 43 inches in the C7, 42.8 in the C8. Marginal difference, you're not going to notice a difference. Next, shoulder room, 55.2 versus 54.4. A little bit close to an inch drop here in shoulder room. Then moving to the hip room, 53.7 versus 52 inches in the C8 Corvette. And finally, headroom. This came in identical, 37.9, 37.9. So you can see here that overall, the interior of the C8 is smaller. However, it's marginally smaller. We're talking about fractions of an inch and some close to an inch. So I don't think it's going to be a big concern once people start sitting in these, and most people are going to feel comfortable in the C8. So those are the numbers that were leaked on the Corvette forum regarding the C8 and the comparison of those numbers to the C7 generation Corvette. And I would like to close this video out with the higher horsepower trim, the infamous Z06 trim level for Corvettes. The rumor mill is turning, and I usually don't drink the Kool-Aid. However, what sparked my interest is that the new Z06 may have a flat plane crank engine, and it's supposedly going to pump out 800 horsepower. And the other rumor is that it will have a naturally aspirated engine, which is also fantastic, as the Z06 has always had a naturally aspirated engine prior to the C7. Now, I really don't care if it has 800 horsepower or 750 horsepower, whatever. My personal prediction is that it'll have between 770 and 780. And the reason why I say that is because it'll just be marginally more than the C7 ZR1. But the part that intrigues me the most is not the horsepower, it's the flat plane crank engine. It would make sense for Corvette to put the flat plane crank motor in the Z06 because it would make it more exotic and bring it into the level of Ferrari, McLaren, and Lamborghini, as most of these cars use flat plane crank engines, specifically Ferrari, which has that unique exhaust sound. If they were able to put the flat plane crank engine in the Z06, I would most definitely be in line for one. And if they somehow figure out how to put a manual in it as well, it would be game over. Anyway, that's the end of this video. It's on the longer end, so if you stuck around, thanks for watching. Until next time, drive steady.